there, welcome back. Today I'm going to do a What the Hell Is This? And this is for Clerks 3, which has just been released on for rental on various streaming platforms. And it's an unholy mess of what the hell were they thinking. It was like, I know people who like this film, and I've seen good reviews of this film, and I don't get it. I genuinely do not get it. It's like, for me, this is like the worst film I've seen, one of the worst films I've seen all year. Down to the monsters for just incompetence and terrible writing and terrible acting and just bad ideas upon bad ideas. It's only a one potentially decent idea that absolutely destroys by self-importance and just been so easy on yourself, been lazy, that it's staggeringly awful. Kevin Smith's been a director who has been getting into self-parody for decades by now, and who's been lazy, who had about 3 years of not being lazy as a writer, of him being ambitious, 3 or 4 years. Basically the 90s stuff had some problems, but he seemed to have some ambition then. And then we got to the 2000s, he just seemed to not care anymore, and do like bad film after bad film. He made Clerks, which is one of his best films still. It was a bit rough around the edges, but it was a good, enjoyable film. Chasing Amy had the same thing. It had some self-indulgences, but there was a good core to it, and a good idea of complications. So there was stuff like that where he was ambitious. Mallrats was self-indulgent silliness, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Dogma was a bit of a mess, but it was an interesting mess. And since then he's pretty much been like doing sentimental stuff like Jersey Girl. He's done Zack and Mimi Make a Porno, which was okay. Clerks 2 was okay. It's some major issues, but the charm of certain actors got it through a lot of rough patches. A lot of rough patches in Clerks 2, but it was one of those ones, it kind of floated in the goodwill of the first one to a big degree, that it was like, okay, there was a couple of good scenes here, and there was a couple of charming scenes, and it made up for the terrible musical numbers and some terrible self-indulgent stuff. And since then, he's been, since Clerks 2, he's been fairly obviously getting worse and worse. I could not watch the Bruce Willis film he made. I tried 20 minutes and I just gave up because it was so terrible and so ill-judged, and the acting was just so atrocious, and the writing and everything was just so awful. And he's had terrible reviews for quite a lot of his films. He's completed a lot of the critics as well, but they're just observing what's there. Ultimately, if you're putting out a bad product, you can't complain if people are pointing out you're putting out a bad product. Clerks 3 was what I think people hoped would be him returning to some sort of sense. He'd had a heart attack, so it's a film about a person who's had a heart attack. You think, okay, he's going to really try with this one. No, he didn't. Not at all. This was just like some of the self-indulgent stuff he's been doing for a while. And it had acting and jokes as bad as that Bruce Willis film. There's some horrendous stuff here. It's one of those films that early on I thought, oh, we're in trouble. It just starts off with something so sentimental towards itself. And there's a lot of things here that's about the idea of the past and how you deal with the past. But the film's point of view, the film, what it's selling to you, is so self-aggrandizing about Kevin Smith and his past of making these films, of making all these Jane Silent Bob films, which he stars in, which are terrible comedies, and how great it was he did this. No, it really wasn't. It was a sign that you were self-indulgent and no one told you to get your ego in check. So early on, there's this whole thing. It's meant to be about how the characters are now and what's going on now. And it's meant to be a thing about getting up to speed. But it's so sentimental and so just about the glory of me type of thing that takes away from the fact the characters are just working like normal jobs. A few of them own businesses, but they're working normal jobs. And suddenly takes you out of fantasy land straight away. So you don't have a chance to even like get a solid base in the characters. You're already into like sticky, bad comedy. So your base for the any drama coming has been undermined from the opening sequence. And you even have a bit where you find out some character from the second one has died amidst all these jokes, and it's just a total whiplash. And you're thinking, okay, that has not landed at all now. So what you obviously want to place there has not landed because you've been so sticky and so self-indulgent. And the framing of the shots are terrible. The pacing of the editing's terrible. Well, this needs an editor to come in and say, look, you've got to cut some of this stuff and get rid of some of these scenes because there's some stuff that just drags on forever. So early on, you're in a mess of this melange of different tones and bad acting already starting up. Like you've got some people trying to be pulling it back, and some people just overacting as if they're in a bad sitcom. And there's a one character from the second one, Elias, I think his name is. He was legend guy in the second one who becomes a Satan worshiper in the third one. Who was okay in the second one, but this one he's so overacting the whole film that you just want somebody to shoot him. He's so bad in this film. It's like there's no excuse. There's like the director should have been like, no, don't. Just don't. And he's like the worst character in the film. And there's just a lot of performances that are not good. But the whole tone's off. And then you get to the meat of the plot, which is Randall, the cynical character of the first two films, has a heart attack that could have almost killed him. Sort of what Kevin Smith had. But they play it for laughs. And we're not talking about funny laughs. We're talking about sticky sitcom laughs. So we're at a situation that is serious, where someone could be dying, and instead there's dick jokes and there's silly jokes, and it's the worst sitcom ever, all the worst jokes, and it's paced, it's snail paced, so there's no sense of what this guy's feeling, there's no sense of danger. They're having these dialogue scenes of I hope he doesn't die, but they've so overdone the comedy and terrible performances. Justin Long turns up plays a comedy nurse, and it's awful. It's just awful. And so half an hour in, they flattened everything into these terrible jokes, these awful jokes that meander on, and each scene just is like double length it should be, and no one's told to pick the pace up as actors. No one's told to try and deliver properly. And even actors, Jeff Anderson, who was the strong point in the first two films, even he's meandering through these scenes too. And he was always the strong point in these films. Brian O'Halloran, who plays Dante in it, was fine in the first one. In the second one, he was way over his head. In the third one, again, he's way over his head. He's not good in this film. And it's this like this embarrassment of bad acting, but most importantly, it's bad direction, because the director hasn't like worked out what his actors can do and what they can't do and protected them. He's just thrown stuff at them and just let them just meander on. So it's absolutely appalling. It's some of the worst, most pasteless, death-like comedy I've seen since The Munsters. And this is meant to be a serious subject, and they don't have the ability to actually do what they're trying to do, which is to try and make something serious funny. They just don't have the material, they don't have the actors, they don't have anything. So after that, we get further scenes where Randall comes back and he decides has a post almost dying experience where he gets pretty selfish and he wants to make a film about his life, and he acts like a dick to everybody, but everyone goes along with him because he just had a heart attack, and he's going to make a film about his life in the quick stop, and obviously they're going to remake the first film. And the whole point of this could have been good. Because the idea of it is like, what you see as the highlights of your life, what does other people see of that might be different. And if you don't even know that, it could cause problems. That's a good idea. Which we completely ignore till the last minute. Until a terrible drunken scene that's really badly acted. And instead you get joke after joke of all these performers from the first film coming back, much older and much hackier and much... It's like watching people who you knew years ago come back and you meet up with them again and they're drunk and they're overselling all their jokes. They think every joke they have is funny. It's like that throughout the middle of this film. And they're reshooting scenes of the first one and making you wish you were dead watching it because every scene's much worse than the first one. And they have a terrible... the worst scene in the film is where Kevin Smith brings in all his famous pals to come in and act as if they're people from the community who are auditioning for the film. And it's like, it's okay, so your main idea, your central idea is this is about real life and about real life people. And you've had real life people overacting like crazy. You've had actors overacting like crazy. And now you're bringing up your celebrity pals in as if they're normal people. And then you're having them overact, including Ben Affleck, Sarah Michelle Gellar and stuff like that. And it just pulls out the film even more. And then after that, Michael says, just use about real people. Why bother? And then you have Jason Mewes as Jay and this Kevin Smith by Silent Bob. And they're terrible as well. They're really stiff and awkward and they just look old and tired. And you've all these scenes replayed, and at this point I'm almost screaming out of embarrassment watching this terrible, terrible film. And I have no idea why it's getting good reviews. It's excruciating watching this thing. It's one of those ones that's like, it's not that long, so it's getting you through it because you know it's not that long, but it feels really long. And every scene is misplayed and miswritten, and all these scenes about the glory of me for Kevin Smith. Look at these films I did when I was much younger. Yeah, you were much more talented. Now you're just this old hack who's just bringing out his old jokes again. And it's appalling. I mean, it's really appalling, and the direction's so terrible. The camera placement is awful. The pacing of the edits are terrible. And nothing's going on dramatically. All you have is Randall being a dick. Instead of actually saying you're being a dick early on and actually making that a drama, and focusing on the actual drama of the situation of some guy who's had a midlife crisis because of a heart attack, and how difficult that can be to be around that. Because Peter Weir made a great film of that called Fearless. So a guy who survives a plane crash, and how it messes with his mind. That's a good idea, you can do that. But you have to bring it up early and actually start working through it. Instead of having everyone just kowtow to him, and then having one explosion scene of someone yelling. But you don't get that. Instead of Kevin Smith just focus on the glory of me, there's this other plot that actually could be worked in and could be interesting, but no, we're going to do all these terrible jokes that basically remake the first film, so you can't be asked actually writing a new film. You'd much rather just repeat all the same jokes and charge people for it. So you've got 2/3 of the way through the film and it's still no film. You've just got the one character who's been awful, but not even funny awful, he's just been awful. And you've got the other character, Dante, who is just a schlub in this film, and every scene they try and make him human, everyone else steals from him, really. Because Rosario Dawson plays the girlfriend in the second one, she's back in a few scenes because her character died. And he's talking to her, what he thinks is a ghost. And the idea is he hasn't moved on from her death and he's depressed and no one's realising. Again, could have been dramatically interesting. But they don't play it right. They just have everyone ignoring it. And there's no dramatic scenes. They just have these dialogue scenes because Kevin Smith wants to try and have dialogue scenes that they can shoot in one day and that lasts like a third of the film or something. And these meandering scenes where they waste a lot of time on jokes about having sex with dead celebrities and stuff, and lots of stuff that aren't funny anymore. And it's just cringe. And it's like you're avoiding your own film repeatedly for terrible jokes. And eventually Dante finally explodes because Randall's ignored the reality of how depressed he is, and Dante's abused him, or Randall's abused Dante, which should have been really interesting. But it's not. It's actually the worst part of the film. Because you've made Randall's character so obnoxious, beyond logic obnoxious. The character before had obnoxious parts, but he was observant. This one he's not observant at all. And the idea he was not observant could have been an actual interesting thing, but it's not really made so until it's so obnoxious for a viewer that you want to see him die. And Dante's he's so weak and lazy in this film, and he's so pushes himself to be a Smithers. The character's not interesting. You have no respect for him. He sure told us to get lost or found another solution. But he does lots of stuff, plot details about selling his half of the business he's built up to his ex-girlfriend to make this film that doesn't make any sense in reality. It just makes sense in sitcom land. It's bloody awful. So finally, Dante has a heart attack, which is and because he yells how much he hates this film. So Dante has his heart attack. It's obviously he's going to die. They're going to do the big sad death scene. And then what does Randall do after he's been yelled out by his pal for how he's ruined his life in the film? He shows him the final film on his deathbed. And that's the sentimental ending. Even though he's tortured this guy for most of the film, this bloody film. And it's been so badly written that you're not getting either of them's perspective in any possible interesting way. And there's been no nuance at all, instead of just been stupid jokes. That's meant to be sentimental and meant to be moving. And it's not. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's just like, oh yeah, I've destroyed you, so let's destroy you even more. You think, at this point, people would be punching him for being so, selfish and horrible. But no. It's almost as if, all worked out at the end. You're thinking, no, this is like a hate crime at this point. This is terrible. I mean, this is like you're making someone, you cause a guy to have a heart attack by your behaviour. Now you're showing them the results of the thing that caused him a heart attack and kill him. It's just like so tone deaf. It's awful. It's just awful. It's awful behaviour. It makes you hate both the characters. And these are characters I quite liked in the first two films. But they've no human dimension in this one. They've no human complexity. They're just like cartoon characters. And the actors have nothing to do. So I complain about the bad acting. In some ways it's not their fault. They're not really given stuff to do. Even when they've got speeches and things to talk about, it's not that human. It's actually melodramatic nonsense that someone who are in their 40s and 50s would be like much more nuanced about or clear about. It's like they've been written as if they're still in their 30s but they've got bad hearts or something. It's just like they're like children, actually. You think about it, they're actually like children. 30s is too generous. Really spoiled 30-year-olds. But they're like children. And it's just, it's so degrading to the first two films in lots of ways. But mainly it's so degrading to the viewer to watch this absolute garbage. Where there's been no work done scene to scene. And it's hard to even talk about it because, I mean, it just feels like I just complain about how terrible it is because it's just so lazy and there's areas that could have been good if they'd actually put the effort in. And the whole idea of what does your memories mean to someone else who's had a much more difficult life could be a good basis for a film if you actually respect that. But this film doesn't do that. This is not trying to be a drama. This is trying to be... It's trying to go towards sentimentality as an escape from actually looking at any human interaction with any depth. Really. or having respect for an audience to actually give them any depth. It's an invasion of any drama that's actually vaguely realistic. It's a director being sentimental with himself in a horrible way, in a way that a drunk person, maybe a family would be, and you'd be like, "What about this guy? Oh God, he's such an idiot." It's that kind of thing, the film version of that, of someone who has made up a story about how their life has been. That's nothing to do with reality, nothing to do with it's evading any actual reality. It's just nonsense. That's the thing. It's like a drunk relative who won't shut up and gets all the stories wrong. That's what this film is. It's awful. It's one of the worst films I've seen this year. And it's probably going to be one of my worst of the decade. Really. Because it's so bad. It's so awful. So I'm going to stop talking about it now. Hopefully rant over. But avoid this film like the plague. It's so bad. Even for a Kevin Smith film, this one's so bad. So that's me for now. I'll see you later. Bye.